Thank you, Dr. Hraboswki, for a great talk, and certainly much for reflection and consideration. Right now, we're going to have a few folks respond to some of the vision that has been presented to us, and I just asked them, first of all, to stand as I call their names, and then one by one they'd come up and have something to offer. First, Dr. James Clements, the president of Clemson University, please, if you'd be so kind to stand. And then Joan Gable, the provost of the University of South Carolina. Joe Neal, the South Carolina House of Representatives. Tammy Pawlowski, the director of the Center of Excellence to Prepare Teachers of Children of Poverty. Tammy. And I don't know, did Molly Spearman, she did make it, she's on the other side of the room, South Carolina Superintendent of Education. So I would ask that they would come up, offer some reactions, some thoughts, some reflections on our speakers' thoughts today. And first, if we could ask Jim Clements if you'd be first to start. Thank you.
Wow. Powerful. I'm still taking it all in. Every time I'm near Freeman, I get so moved and so emotional. Think how blessed I have been to have him for a mentor for 25 years. What an unbelievable opportunity for me. And some of you might know, my parents didn't go to college, and my grandparents didn't graduate from high school. But the transformational power of education that Freeman is so passionate about is really something that changed my life, and I've seen it change so many other people's lives. That's why I got into higher education, simply to make a difference. And for 25 years, I've had a chance to listen to and be mentored by literally the best of the best. Freeman, every time I listen to you, I scribble down so many notes. And I've got pages of things here that touch me kind of personally, saying what I've gone through in my life, and somebody like Freeman as a mentor has helped change my life. But the one thing that you talk about is relationships. And I think what I'm asked to do here is to challenge you to think about how we can take his very powerful message to make South Carolina even better. And I ask you to think about relationships and what we can do with our personal relationships, like I have with Dr. Hraboswki, who has made my life better and has given me an opportunity to bless some other people through my position. So I ask you to think about that. And I want to say, Freeman, you talk a lot about your mother and the impact. And I talk a lot about my mother and her impact. And my mother, I learned this later in life, really as I got a little older. When I was younger, she always told me many things that I learned, such as God has given all of us really special gifts. Really special gifts. And as an educator, it's our job to bring those gifts out in other people. But she always told me to make a difference. And when I got older, I realized she never said try to make a difference. She said make a difference. And there's a difference between those two statements. So as I think about the incredible journey that Freeman has had and the message that he has shared, I really ask you, how can we enhance, increase, and use our personal relationships to make a greater difference in this state? And Freeman, I've seen you do it with so many people. You mentioned to me about my background. You talked a little bit. Freeman was the first person that said to me, way before I ever thought about it, I was just in education. I have 4 degrees from UMBC that I'm really proud of. But Freeman was the first who said to me, Jim, you're going to be a university president. I had never even thought about that. But then he said, I will help make that happen. And then he said, when it happens, I will help you succeed. And he has done it to this day. He still mentors me. We still talk on a regular basis. That personal relationship can go a long way. So I ask you to think about personal relationships and what you can do in your communities to make an even greater difference. God bless you.
I'd ask Joan Gable, please, from Provost of USC, if you'd kindly come up and offer some thoughts.
Hello, everybody. Great pleasure to be here. So I have a slightly different story and have, I think, the power of these remarks hit me in a slightly different way that I'd like to share with you. Because the word that occurred to me, actually, as I heard you speak, and for me it was the first time, I don't know how many of you are in the same position I am, was accountability, where you really think about who stepped into the different people's lives to say, I actually can make a difference here, in a relationship context or in a multiplier way. And we really think about this a lot in higher education. What does it mean to be accountable to the citizens of the state? I have personally a very different story. My grandmother had a doctorate. So I had this incredibly demanding standard of achievement that was infused on me and my siblings and my cousins as we were coming up, and there was no choice but. Right? And I think maybe some of you can relate to that too. And I was very lucky. I'm very lucky, and I'm in that group that was described to us earlier, and I'm very happy to have had those benefits and those opportunities. But to those who receive much, much should be given back. And so I think for many of us in this room, wherever we started, we're very lucky to be where we are now. And we're very lucky to be in the positions that we're in. And I know by coming here today, to some degrees, and forgive me for saying this within the church, we're preaching to the choir. But at the same time, what does that really mean? To hear words as powerful as those and to be so humbled by them, and then to say, okay, but actually, what do we then do? Which audience or group am I going to affect? Which person am I going to affect? Who am I going to make feel loved so that when they have the opportunity for their next step, they feel accountable too for themselves and for all of us who have the opportunity to help and move them forward. So thank you very much. Look forward to hearing your questions.
I'd like to ask now Joan Neal from South Carolina House of Representatives, if you'd be so kind as to share some thoughts with us.
Hello. Dr. Hraboswki, as I sat and listened to your presentation, I was greatly moved. Moved not just because of the content, but because it resonated so much with me. I grew up in rural Richland County with a family who's always loved and appreciated education. My parents were educators. My grandparents were educators. But it was a difficult trek for my parents and grandparents to be educated. At the time that my parents were seeking advanced degrees, they could not attend schools here in South Carolina. So instead, they had to attend schools up north, in my mother's case, New York University, and my father, Columbia. Turned out it was a better choice at the time. The reality, though, was that it imposed a lot of hardships on our family because we had to be separated from our parents during the summers when they attended school for their advanced degrees. And that went on for years until they finally graduated. As an elected official, I look at what we're facing in South Carolina a little bit differently. And I appreciate and understand the value of relationships because, frankly, relationships move the legislature. It's how we do business, our relationships with one another. But as a legislator, when I look at public policy, I worry. I worry because in this state, we have taken the position through public policy that much of our population is disposable. That's over the decades and generations. And because we have taken that position, it has left us in a position where we are struggling as a state to undo the damage that has been done by our assuming through public policy that position. As we look at South Carolina's struggle to get off the bottom of every list that matters, including education, we finally have seen some enlightenment in terms of leadership in that regard, but the road is still rough and rocky. We have the Abbeville lawsuit was brought by poor districts in this state, seeking a remedy from the state of South Carolina for funding, because these school districts have been so grossly underfunded for so many years. As I think about the public policy pieces that we have to engage in terms of finding the resources to put in place to remediate the damage that's been done, it struck me that what you were suggesting is something that is so valuable that I wish we could bottle it and force feed it to the legislature. Because too many of us simply don't recognize the humanity that we share with one another. Too many of us don't recognize that we're really all in this boat together. And if we don't find solutions to the problems that we face, all of us ultimately will suffer. So I want to say thank you, first for inspiring, and secondly for enlightening all of us who now can face this issue with a little bit of pep in our step, a little bit of glide in our stride because of what you have done. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe. I'd ask now if Tammy Palowski, the Director of the Center of Excellence to Prepare Teachers of Children of Poverty, would share some thoughts and reflections. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you so much. Very inspiring, and so it's wonderful for me to be back again this year. Last year we talked about many of these same kinds of topics, and as director of the Center of Excellence at Francis Marion, we have established, our center was actually established in response to the Abbeville lawsuit. And our focus is to work with teachers who work in high poverty schools to empower them to reveal that hidden potential of students that we have found in our work. There are two kind of myths that follow them. One myth is, sadly, oh, those kids can't ever learn. The other myth is, bless their hearts, let's lower the expectations. And you spoke to both of those. And so my charge and my work is to drill into the research and to identify strategies. And I was so thrilled that you mentioned, and I'll just reel off a few, reading, the importance of reading, mentors, values, early childhood education to all of our early childhood educators, the impact of the summer slide, children who lose the gains that they make in schools over that 3-year period. You also talked about access for all and, of course, high expectations. I really didn't intend to share a personal story, but I will, following my esteemed colleagues. Many of you have heard the story of my son. We adopted him at birth, and he's a kid of poverty. I didn't know he was a kid of poverty until I was 5 years into this work, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is my child. What would have happened had he not had resources? What would have happened had he not had family members who empowered him to go to summer camp and be exposed to folks just like you? What would have happened had he not had teachers who listened to a mom who sometimes reminded them of the kinds of services that he needed because he was born in poverty? What would happen if you all don't reach out? What would happen if we all don't extend our gifts to those who need them? And what will happen if we do? Thank you all for taking this morning to be here to think about children, their families, and their needs. We can change kids' lives. We can change the trajectory if we all lock arms together. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Tammy. And finally, I'd ask Molly Spearman if you'd be so kind as to share with us. Molly, of course, is South Carolina Superintendent of Education. Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning, my dear friends. Good morning, all of you. Dr. Hraboswki, thank you so much. When I came in, I thought, my goodness, we must have had mental telepathy or something on our talk, but thank you for your words, your encouragement. I grew up on a dairy farm with parents who did not go to college, Jim. My mom didn't finish high school. But they loved us and gave us opportunities and supported us. A few words that you said really encouraged me. Number one was love. And sometimes we as educators and public officials, we don't want to use those warm, fuzzy words, but we talk a lot about it now in educators. That the first thing you have to do in order to teach children is they have to know you love them. And to reach their heart, to reach their mind, we go through the heart. So we talk about that a lot. And I want you to know that my being in this role is because first I love the Lord and I really think that He has allowed me to be in this position to share His love through this job. And my challenge to each of you is for us as Christians to serve. And that was another word you used, service. And to bring hope to young people and to help them have the confidence that they need to believe in themselves. Our vision is that we have to have every child in South Carolina ready when they graduate from high school. And that's easy to say, a little harder to do when you say every. And quite honestly, to do every child, educators, we can't do it by ourselves. It's more than we can do by ourselves in that short time frame a day that we have them at school. We need your help. And the one thing that every community has in South Carolina, they may not have Boeing, they may not have Michelin, but they got a church. They got a church, every community, and usually they got a couple of them, you know, on every corner. And so that's why I have really been led to, and you have caught that spirit already. It's a great alignment that we are saying, church folks, we want your help in our public schools. You can. The old line, you've heard me say it over and over, you can't come in talking about Jesus, just come act like Him. We need you to come to our schools and say, what can I do to help? What can I do to help you? To principals, to superintendents. And then we need you to come in with whatever you are able to give from your congregation, whether it's being mentors, reading with a child, being a mentor to a young man or woman who doesn't have that adult figure in their life, supporting the teachers in whatever way, if it's books, if it's backpack programs, whatever, we need your help. And we need every church to be giving and encouraging their members to be involved. And I am the voice to tell educators it's okay. And when they knock on your door, have something meaningful for these folks to do. Don't say, oh, no, we don't have anything right now. And honestly, I do get calls saying, can we really have them in our schools? And I say, Joe, yeah, they can come. Joe, Nikki, they can come in. So thank you for your message today. We've got a lot of work to do in South Carolina. And I think we do have the right leadership and the movement. But I am very challenged by the enormity of what we need to do. And there is a great urgency because we have let a generation of children go by who are not receiving the opportunities that they need. So this isn't something we can keep putting off. Just to share with you, because of that, we have very quickly adopted a new strategy for us to get the right people out, the right adults out in communities who have expertise to help the folks who are living there do a better job teaching the children and meeting their needs. The General Assembly has funded additional funds for us this year to hire coaches, to hire folks who will be going out working in the communities. I think about when Jesus said, "Bring the little children to me," the adults kind of, really? But he said, "Bring them on." And there must have been some adults who actually brought the children there that day. I think there was probably a group of teachers who brought the children that day. And sometimes what I found in some communities, sometimes the adults are more worried about adult things than they are about the children things, about jobs, about who's going to be hired, who makes the decisions, the school board. We have to help refocus people on that it's about the children, and we have to make right decisions about the children. We are really at the Department of Education building a new team of folks who have that spirit of going in to love, to serve, to train, and to build capacity within those rural communities where the need is so great. It's not about just bringing in a lot of folks from the outside who are going to do the work. I appreciate what you said about teach by doing, learn by doing, the old 4-H motto. We need to help the adults in the communities learn to do a better job. And that's our strategy now at the Department of Education. But we open it up and we need your help, and I hope that you will volunteer and encourage your congregations to be involved in their local schools, in their local communities. Thank you.
And just finally, if I just might offer a brief reaction. I was moved very much by your focusing on reading. My parents were both immigrants, and my mother came to the United States in 1917, the oldest of 5 children of a widowed mother. And they crossed the Atlantic in 1917, if you can imagine crossing the Atlantic in World War I, certainly a courageous move. But when they came to the States, my mother was the oldest of the 5 children, and so had limited education just at night because she had to go to work at 12, 13 years old to help support this widow with 5 children. Eventually, my mother met my father, who, again, was uneducated beyond 8th grade, or, the equivalent of 8th grade in Italy as well. Well, he never went on for any further education, but just got one job after another and supported the family. However, my mother learned the English language pretty much on her own and with some night classes until she was about 16, 17 years old. But after they had married and she had her own first child, my oldest brother, Nick, worked for Doubleday in New York. And he would bring home books after books after books, books that they were throwing away, overproductions of books. She would read everything. She read anything she could possibly get her hands on. And I can never remember her speaking with an accent, or never remember her not knowing the answers to some of, I would say, some very, very deep questions, because she read everything, constantly reading, reading, reading. In fact, I should be very grateful for the fact that she was reading, because my oldest brother was named Nicola Remo. You can imagine that. My second oldest brother was named Tito Walter, combination of names. But at the time I was born, she was reading about the, well, I guess down here I'd have to say the war between the states. And she was engrossed by this man named Robert E. Lee. And so while my father had some sort of an Italian name for us, she insisted that her youngest son was going to be named after this Southern general, Robert E. Lee. So I am Robert E. Guglielmoni. Thanks to her reading so much, and then reading of the Civil War. So that whole theme of reading is critical absolutely critical. And without any formal education, I still considered my mother to be one of the most educated women that I ever knew. So, thank you.